Coming up on Colonial Crossfire. The Israeli elections. 2016 presidential politics. And net neutrality. Joining us on the left, Martin McSherry. On the right, Nate D'Amico. And I'm your moderator, Andrew Desiderio. This is Colonial Crossfire. A resounding re-election for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But does he have a mandate to govern? Welcome to Colonial Crossfire. I'm Andrew Desiderio. On the heels of a controversial address to Congress and an apparent flip-flop on his view of the two-state solution, Netanyahu was re-elected to another term. But it didn't come without a cost. Some believe the Prime Minister's already fragile relationship with President Obama is worse than ever. Earlier this week, the Obama administration accused Netanyahu of using divisive rhetoric on the eve of his election. Here to analyze the ongoing situation, our student panel. On the left, Martin McSherry, a sophomore from New York majoring in political communication. Martin works at Cornerstone Government Affairs, a firm working with Senate Democrats on a variety of issues. And on the right, Nate D'Amico, a junior from Connecticut majoring in political science. Nate is the political affairs director for the College Republicans. Thanks to both of you for joining us. The day before the election, Prime Minister Netanyahu said there will be no two-state solution under his watch. This was viewed by his critics as a hard turn to the right to get some last-minute votes, as many polls showed him slightly trailing his closest rival. But just 2 days after the election, Netanyahu seemed to walk that back.
Are wrong. I haven't changed my policy. I never retracted my speech in Bar-Ilan University 6 years ago, calling for a demilitarized Palestinian state that recognizes the Jewish state. What has changed is the reality. Abu Mazen, the Palestinian leader, refuses to recognize the Jewish state. He's made a pact with Hamas that calls for the destruction of the Jewish state.
So Martin, do you take the Prime Minister at his word?
Absolutely, I do, and I think it's unfortunate because it does dim the prospects for peace in the Middle East, which is the best thing for Israelis and Palestinians. No matter what the results of the election, nothing will change the fact that Israel is and will remain our greatest ally in the region, and that's why we've given them $20 billion under President Obama's administration to build up their military. We just don't want them to have to use it, and a two-state solution is the best way to do that. Republican and Democratic administrations alike have agreed, so I find his comments troubling at best.
Okay. Nate, do you agree?
Right. You know, I think, as Martin said, everybody supports Israel. I would hope that there is no prospect in the future for us withdrawing support. I think what people forget a lot of the time is that Israel's not one single cohesive political unit. Just like in our country, there are a lot of, there are more liberal groups, more conservative groups. And because they do have a multi-party system, it gets a lot more complicated when it comes to elections. I think the Prime Minister's comments generally were more of an effort to get out the vote, to lock down the votes he needed for the conservative side. And our own country is no stranger to using rhetoric like that. I think the part that kind of got me a little bit was the quote from the president saying, we take him at his word when he said that it won't happen during his prime ministership, and so we want to evaluate other options. The president promised to close Guantanamo Bay. 7 years into his presidency, we still haven't done that. There was the, if you like your doctor, you can keep them line. Healthcare won't rise.
So do you think when the Obama administration specifically said that there was divisive rhetoric that he used on the eve of the election just to get votes, do you agree with that characterization?
I wouldn't make that an unfair characterization. It's certainly possible. I unfortunately do not have a very intimate knowledge of the internal workings of Israeli politics, but while I wouldn't say that that is a false characterization, what I would say is that it's a little bit, I find it a little bit amusing that the president would kind of call him out on that, considering that that happens in every political race.
So Martin, what do you think about that other controversial comment he made when he said Arab voters were coming out in droves to support his rival?
In the United States, we have a long and ugly, painful history of using ethnic and racial politics to try and drive out your vote. Part and parcel of electioneering and campaigning is saying, The other side's coming out, we need to come out.
Right.
But when you put an ethnic angle to it, it's really troublesome. And he's the prime minister now of all of Israel. That's Arabs, Jews, Israelis, Europeans, whomever. And that kind of divisive ethnic rhetoric is really troublesome, and it undermines his own credibility to come to the negotiating table with Palestinians to get lasting, sustainable peace in the Middle East.
Right, so speaking of divisive rhetoric, of course, he came under fire from a lot of Democrats in this country who said that he shouldn't have even been speaking to the U.S. Congress in advance of his election. Nancy Pelosi said that it might put, the nuclear negotiations with Iran in jeopardy. Martin, do you agree with her on that?
Well, it was a breach of diplomatic protocol not to consult the president first. And I don't think, as a patriot, I feel comfortable with any foreign leader coming to the United States, speaking to Congress to try and undermine the president's foreign policy, if that's President George Bush or President Obama. In 2003, in the lead up to the Iraq War, I wouldn't have wanted the president of France to come over without consulting the president to speak out against the Iraq War, even though I don't support the Iraq War. So you can have disagreements, but still support the leader of your country in some way.
Nate, what do you think about the speech? Should he have come to America 2 weeks before his election?
I think that that's a good point. Obviously there are established norms in politics, and one of them is that you don't generally come to a country, speak to their legislative body without the approval of the executive. That being said, the situation for Israel is very different from, say France is the example you gave. The problem with Israel is that they're under an existential threat at all times. They have enemies on all sides of them, and particularly in the case of Iran, this is a country that the rhetoric has been for decades that they have to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. I think it perhaps, I think we'll touch on this also if we get to discussing the letter sent by the
GOP. Go to that next, actually, yeah.
It is perhaps a breach of protocol, yes, but under the circumstances, and even more so than in the case of the letter, I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has absolutely every prerogative to go and to state his case, especially in the face of an administration that, while still supporting and respecting the alliance with the Israeli people, has been pretty, if not hostile, then at least cold towards Netanyahu and his administration. I mean, there's various comments that have come out of the administration criticizing the prime minister, which I would say are also kind of a breach of protocol in that case.
Right, so Martin, on the subject of that controversial letter, do you think it was right for Republicans to send that? Was it maybe an effort to undermine the president's negotiations with Iran?
Yeah, and the coldness you speak of is a two-way street. There's a report out of the Wall Street Journal this week that Israel spied on negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, and then leaked that to Republicans in order to undermine the president's foreign policy. And with regard to the letter, there are Republicans like Senator Jeff Flake who said that it's a really bad idea, it's not appropriate, it's not productive. John McCain, who signed the letter, walked it back and said, well, there was a snowstorm coming, I didn't really know what I was doing entirely, and then I left. It was inappropriate, but to send a letter to the supreme leader of Iran to try and undermine your own president. And again, as a patriot, no matter who the president is, I think that kind of behavior is inappropriate. And ultimately, a minority of senators signed the letter, and some of them do regret it.
Nate, so just real quick, with Democrats coming out against Netanyahu on the speech to Congress, on this letter that the Republicans signed to Iran, do you think there's some type of breach now within the Democratic Party of some who don't like Netanyahu but still can say they support Israel?
Right. I think obviously there is a difference between not supporting Benjamin Netanyahu and not supporting the state of Israel. I don't think that there's any likelihood whatsoever that the Democratic Party will come out as anti-Israel. And it's perfectly legitimate for them to criticize the Prime Minister. But the problem I have is that he has been reelected, he is the leader of Israel, and whether you like him or not, you have to work with him, and you have to hope, with all of his comments notwithstanding, you still have to work with him to try and achieve peace, with Palestine, achieve a solution with Iran, because that's obviously something they have a very, very large stake in.
Right.
And if I could just touch on the letter briefly, I agree that it is, again, a breach of protocol. I don't disagree with what was said in the letter. I think that it's something that needed to be said, and the president has to remember that when it comes to the end of the day, the House and the Senate are the ones who approve treaties with parties. And it's not the first time this has happened. I mean, Nancy Pelosi in 2007 visited Bashar al-Assad explicitly against President Bush's instructions.
Right, yeah, so I guess both sides are pointing out the double standard. We have to leave it at that, but coming up, Ted Cruz enters the fray, Hillary Clinton faces scrutiny. We look to 2016 next.
The George Washington University, at the intersection of policy, practice, and research, connecting all that Washington has to offer with an intellectual environment that drives progress, transforming vision into action, offering learning experiences that are rigorous, real-time, and real-world. In a city shaping the future, George Washington is a place where faculty and students don't just study the world, they work to change it.
Welcome back. It might seem like President Obama was just re-elected, but we already have at least one declared candidate for president in 2016. He is, of course, first-term Senator Ted Cruz, the firebrand conservative and Tea Party darling. On the other side of the aisle, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, seen as the presumptive Democratic nominee, has found herself in some hot water over her email practices. A New York Times report revealed that Clinton exclusively used a personal email address when she was the nation's top diplomat. Some legal experts say she might have violated the Federal Records Act, a law requiring federal employees to preserve documents on government servers. At a press conference, Clinton maintained everything she did was legal.
When I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two. Looking back, it would have been better if I'd simply used a second email account and carried a second phone, but at the time, this didn't seem like an issue.
Now we'll dissect both of these stories, but let's start with Clinton. Nate, do you buy her convenience explanation?
So first of all, I think it was kind of a cop-out. I don't think they thought it was going to go quite as far as it has so far. But to address the convenience explanation, I mean, is that really, does she think that's a legitimate excuse? This is a woman who wants to be the most powerful person on the face of the earth, who wants to have nuclear launch codes in her back pocket, but she can't handle a second cell phone. I mean, in 2008, John McCain was ripped apart for saying that he didn't like to use email or didn't really know how to use email. I mean, this is, you know, I have two email accounts on my phone. I have my personal one, I have my school one. It's really not that hard to keep it up. And if you're trying to be the most powerful person on the face of the earth, that's really something that you should be able to handle.
Right, and just a few weeks ago, Clinton actually said she has multiple devices, so it's not like she didn't have access to them. So, Martin, another New York Times report, a follow-up report earlier this week, said that despite Clinton's claims that she emailed with people who used state.gov email addresses, her closest aides actually also used personal email addresses, so they were not properly archived by the State Department, like is required by the Federal Records Act, and like she said at the press conference. So doesn't it seem like there's some holes in her argument here?
She's turned over 55,000 pages of emails to the State Department to look over. Anything she sent to state.gov employees, they could have preserved that for the record.
But not her closest advisors who
That's
use personal email
That's true.
addresses.
And let's say she asked her advisor to go to yoga class or she talked to Bill or something. If Republicans make this an obsessive fixation to the exclusion of the important larger issues of the American people, then we're going to have our first woman president in 2017. We need to talk about issues like immigration, healthcare, foreign policy, and jobs in the economy. And the American people don't care about this. She still has 53% favorability rating. She's still trouncing all the other Republican candidates in the field and general election polls, and that could be because name recognition, but it's certainly not hurting her that badly from the
Right,
email
and that's
scandal.
a good point. But Nate, doesn't this also play into the narrative of the Clintons being corrupt and somehow not transparent and secretive? What do you think?
I hesitate to get wrapped up in that. I know there's a suit against them right now saying, trying to charge them as part of a RICO scheme. I try to avoid, you know, headline news like that. I agree with you. I don't think this should be the central issue of the 2016 presidential election. I do wish, honestly, that it had come a little bit later, though, because it really does speak to what Hillary Clinton is doing. I mean, you know, Jen Psaki came out a couple of days ago and said, you know, this is actually not true. All of her emails were not automatically saved by the recipients. The problem is not, it's great that she's turned over these tens of thousands of pages of emails. The problem is, I think she should turn over the server. But what it comes down to at the end of the day is, you know, it's just irresponsible. It's not sensible. I mean, even if you buy the convenience issue, there's a reason we have protocols for the State Department. This is one of the most powerful people in the world. She runs the United States diplomacy and foreign contact with other nations. There's a lot of classified stuff, and even if she's not talking about classified material, there's a lot of very sensitive information going on there, and it's the pattern of story after story and just the the entire use of personal emails, I think, indicates that she's not really taking it seriously. She thinks she can just trounce protocols that we've established for very good reasons.
It does play into that narrative that Clintons are corrupt, but it's a failed narrative. It didn't work in 1992, 1996, and I don't think it's going to work in 2016.
So speaking of that,
I do agree with that.
Switching gears a little bit, you know, a lot of people are saying in the Democratic Party that Hillary Clinton's inevitability is actually bad for the party in the long run, that there might not be a competitor in the primary to challenge her. The Boston Globe ran an editorial saying Elizabeth Warren should run for the sake of the Democratic Party so that it keeps Hillary Clinton in check with the progressive values of the Democratic Party. Martin, what do you think of that argument? It
proves that the email scandal is a non-scandal because no other Democrats are really challenging Hillary Clinton. She's a formidable candidate because she is eminently qualified and capable. But sure, we have big issues. There's a lot at stake in 2016. The American people deserve a big debate on both sides. Other people should jump in. Elizabeth Warren is doing a great job in the Senate. She'd bring some interesting issues to the table, and we should have that debate. And I think Hillary Clinton will prevail, and I think she'll be all the more stronger for it.
I want to switch gears now to Ted Cruz. Nate, what did you make of his speech at Liberty University, and do you think he has a chance of becoming the Republican nominee for president?
I have an enormous amount of respect for Ted Cruz. I think he's a very intelligent man. I think he's a very principled man, and he certainly has some of his ideas are ideas that the American people can and should get behind. You know, immigration reform is something that both parties can agree we sorely need. We might disagree on the specifics of that, but it's definitely something that needs work on. When it comes to Obamacare, repealing it may or may not be a good course of action, but as of the latest polls that were taken during the most recent election, you know, there was support was dropping even further. We were down to up to 56% of Americans opposing the law, 37% approving of it. It is a problem. In terms of electability, I think Ted Cruz is not the direction that the Republican Party needs to go in a number of issues, and he's pulled some tactics such as the government shutdown that I don't think are helpful to the debate, but I do like that he's in there because he's going to, as you were saying before about the Democratic candidates, he's going to spark debate and discussion and really force candidates to improve their own views.
Martin, so I guess you're not too keen on the idea of a President Ted Cruz, huh?
No, that'd be great. That'd be the best thing. But you want to talk about healthcare polling? The Republican Party was the least popular it's been in decades after the government shutdown orchestrated by Ted Cruz. I will say two things I liked about his speech, though. He didn't announce an exploratory committee like all the other nonsense candidates. I went on exploration and I found out that I'm the best candidate. And it was off the cuff. He's good speaking off the cuff to a captive audience for 21 hours like he did for his filibuster against healthcare reform.
Right, and some commentators are comparing him to President Obama when he was, you know, on his rise to political power, becoming president, kind of calling him the Republican version of Barack Obama. But of course, there's no doubt he's a very charismatic speaker, but will that translate into votes? That is yet to be seen. After this break, it's rapid fire. Stay with us.
Nearly 16 million people visit Washington, D.C. every year. Some come to witness, some to be heard. We come to make an impact, to learn from leaders, and to lead others, to create and create change. We are the George Washington University. We come to make history.
Buzz started for me out on the line outside of the Barclays Center. You know, a lot of GW alumni filtering in.
I'm just so proud to be an alumni and be a part of this movement.
There hasn't been a team like this in 7, 8, 9 years.
I'd say we probably have over 1,000 people here, and you can feel the energy.
I graduated in 1991.
I graduated in 2009.
I graduated in 2005 from Elliott School.
The School of Medicine and Health Sciences.
From the Columbian College.
If you want a place to be in the world tonight, it's right here with all of our alumni, students, parents, friends of the George Washington University.
It's just important to have a community that supports our student athletes.
I love this team, and I'm proud to support it.
Everyone that's participated and made this happen knows it didn't happen overnight.
What we're trying to do is develop students and student athletes to really impact the world.
This is an even better turnout than last year.
The first thing it can really do for us is get our name out there.
Applications the next year go through the roof.
Tonight you are the George Washington University.
It raises the school spirit and makes us all proud to be Colonials.
And you have really galvanized our whole university community.
You're building a spirit and you're building a family within the university stronger than we've ever had before.
Gentlemen, go out there and raise high.
Crank it up.
Raise high!
Raise high!
Win, baby.
Crank it up.
Raise high, the buff and blue.
Welcome back. Our panel joins us again for rapid fire, some quick answers to some quick questions. First, on net neutrality. Last month, the FCC declared the internet to be a public utility subject to government regulations in an effort to ensure providers treat all internet traffic equally. Martin, was this the right ruling?
Absolutely. Net neutrality keeps the internet exactly the way it is. It protects everyone's equal access to the internet, just like we deserve equal access to water. The internet is just as important as that, vital to a democracy. The democratization of information, keeping it free and fair and equal to everyone is very important.
Nate, do you agree?
I agree with everything Martin just said, except I just don't see it as necessary. I don't know about you guys, I haven't had any problems using the internet. You know, my Netflix is streaming just fine. Until there is something that happens, you know, the Vice President of Telecom, U.S. Telecom said, you know, we don't do these things. There haven't been any problems that I've seen. If that does arise, I agree that it's something that we can explore. At the time, I just don't see the need for it. I think it's excessive government entanglement.
It's a preventative measure.
Switching gears now to Confederate license plates. The Supreme Court is hearing arguments in a case surrounding Confederate flags on license plates in Texas. The court is considering whether the decision to exclude a Confederate group from a custom license plate program in Texas violated their free speech rights. Nate, where is the line here between free speech and potentially offensive material?
I think personally, you know, I grew up in Connecticut. I'm not one to be waving the Confederate flag, but I think this does fall within the limits of expression. I mean, if you look at the design, it's not a Confederate flag design. It's a small Confederate-themed badge on the license. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg brought up the issue of, you know, are we going to have people arguing we're going to put swastikas on license plates? That's different. The Confederate War, or the Civil War, is a part of American history. There are people, whether we, obviously, you know, we can all agree that that was not the right way to go for Americans, but it's a part of American history. There are descendants of Confederate soldiers. It's part of our heritage that I think we have to respect.
Martin, do you agree?
If it's about Southern heritage, why don't you just get a picture of a glass of sweet tea on your license plate? Does it have to be this symbol of institutional racism and war between the states? But free speech protects offensive speech.
Their grandparents didn't die for sweet tea, though.
They
died for the flag.
I'm sure many will argue that.
But that's fair.
But look, free speech protects offensive speech. I find this offensive, but it is free speech.
All right, and switching gears to March Madness. The NCAA men's basketball tournament is in full swing. Martin, who do you think will cut down the nets in Indianapolis?
My understanding of basketball is informed by attending GW games, and those are very hazy due to the libations beforehand, so my memory and understanding of basketball is limited.
Nate?
My bracket right now is worse than Barack Obama's foreign policy. I'm just hoping Kentucky. I have a friend who's a big Kentucky fan, so I'm hoping they pull it off, and I think they have a really good chance. But in terms of my bracket, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I had my hometown team, Villanova, going to the Final Four. Actually, I had them going to the championship game against Kentucky, but losing. But it didn't work out too well.
You were right about
for
one
me.
part of that.
Yeah. And with that, we'll end our debate here on Colonial Crossfire. Thank you to Martin and Nate for joining us. It was a very lively debate. When we come back, Casey Decker has our debate fact check.
Wonderful academic institution with a fine athletic tradition.
Patricio Garino throws it down with two hands.
Wonderful city. It's a great place to go to school.
Keaton Savage open down the right side. Will go and Duncan with his right hand.
Not just a family, it's a whole community.
Armwood Duncan with 1.9 seconds left. Armwood, a thunder slam. 81-80 George Washington. A huge victory for the Colonials.
It's been pretty busy around here with parcel and flex plans going on sale, so we need an extra pair of hands around the office.
Let's go G-Dub! Let's go G-Dub!
We had no idea you were bringing the Colonial Army.
Whoosh! G-Dub!
Hey George, I think you have an update for Firefox. Never mind.
Welcome back. During our panel discussion, a team of fact-checkers monitored our debate. Casey Decker is here to fill us in on what we missed. Casey?
Thanks, Andrew. First, our Democratic panelist, Martin. He said that Senator John McCain walked back his decision to sign the letter to Iran. McCain initially indicated some regret over the letter, but later stood by his decision, saying his only regret was the hasty manner in which the letter was written and signed. Martin also said that Hillary Clinton has maintained a high favorability rating of 53%. That data varies based on individual polls, which recently show ratings as low as 37% and as high as 53%. The average favorability, however, has fallen to just over 47%. And on to our Republican panelist, Nate. When discussing the Clintons' potentially secretive behavior, he referred to a racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, or RICO, lawsuit filed against them. This suit also names President Obama, Secretary of State John Kerry, and UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon, and was filed by the founder of an ultra-conservative political organization. And Andrew, I also have Duke in my bracket. That's all from the Fact Check Desk. Back to you.
Thanks, Casey. That's a very gutsy choice, I must say. And now for Spilled Milk. Here's our tribute to the very best of late-night political comedy.
Today, my love has gone away. The bottle stands so long, a symbol of the dawn.
In Houston, heading off to school, over 1,000 miles away from home, at a place where he knew nobody, where he was alone and scared.
Dude, you went to Princeton. Like, I mean, don't make it sound like you got forced onto the train to Hogwarts.
Dr. Ben Carson, a candidate for president, said that homosexuality is a choice. Unfortunately for him, so are elections.
Mitt Romney said this week that his biggest campaign mistake in 2012 was not communicating well with minorities. In fact, the only minority he did well with was Romney voters.
Presidential candidate Ted Cruz said that he will in fact be signing up for Obamacare, despite saying earlier that he wants to repeal every word of it. It's a good thing he's signing up because Cruz just went to the hospital in hypocritical condition.
Wow. Alien races can't understand Anglo-Saxon principles. I find that condescending, and I'm British. We basically invented patronizing bigotry.
All right, well, that's all for this episode of Colonial Crossfire. For all the latest updates from our political team at any time, be sure to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. For all of us here at GWTV, I'm Andrew Desiderio. Thanks for getting caught in the crossfire with us. We'll see you next time.